Hi, this is Decelany. Welcome back. Yeah, today I'm doing a response to my 20 alt guitar heroes video with 20 alt bass heroes. Yeah, it's the sequel no one asked for. So once again, yeah, this video is not about virtuosity or, technique. This is about players with a sound or a style. Come back to those three things that I mentioned in my first video: ideas, taste, and execution. These players are all about that. Just like the last time, yeah, this is an unranked list in a fairly arbitrary order. I've put a few together next to one another where I think there's a good kind of kinship or some kind of thing that links them there. But other than that, yeah, these are all drawn from punk, post-punk, indie, alternative circles. And there may not be all the big names in there that you're expecting, because I do like to throw in a few kind of less discussed players. Okay, on with the list. And first up, we've got a big name. Yeah, this is Peter Hook. Yeah, one of the most immediately recognizable, distinctive bass tones of the post-punk era. We're talking here Joy Division, New Order primarily, yeah. He famously started playing kind of high up on the bass's neck because of the poor equipment that Joy Division were using in the early days. Yeah, his speakers just kind of gave up the ghost when he was playing low stuff. And Ian Curtis kind of just said, no, Hooky, play that stuff up high. That's really good. Yeah, a big user of modulation, lots of chorus on his bass, and also quite a kind of a famous user of six-string bass. He used a UK brand called Shergold in the kind of the Joy Division New Order days. Yeah, big character, a bass playing legend, really. Yeah, go see Peter play with his new band, The Light. They're basically revisiting the Joy Division and New Order back catalogue. And yeah, they put on a fantastic show. Yeah, second up, and initially at least one of Peter Hook's bass playing heroes. This is Jean-Jacques Burnel of the Stranglers. Yeah, another big character, a really kind of dominating bass player. But, in the context of the Stranglers' music, you couldn't be a shrinking violet. You were fighting against Hugh Cornwell's guitar, Dave Greenfield's really tricky, flowery, complex keyboards. So, if you wanted to be heard, you needed to put yourself out there. And that isn't to say that the Stranglers sounded like some kind of, contest or a competition. They were all just big players, big personalities. These kind of brash collisions that you find in their music are really what makes the Stranglers so unique, I think. Yeah, he's got like a throaty, clanking, kind of really mid-pushed, slightly grindy sound. Yeah, Jean-Jacques is a real kind of brawler of a bass player. He did contribute occasional lead vocals too. Yeah, you want examples, just, think of some of the best Stranglers numbers. Think Peaches, think Nice and Sleazy, Something Better Change. Next up, and third on my list, is the start of a pair of Joes. Yeah, first one being Jo Wiggs. Yeah, Jo's primarily known for her role in The Breeders, where she plays alongside another bass legend who may come up later. But she started out in the band The Perfect Disaster, who are kind of quite a cool, kind of a bustling, repetitive, kind of velvet, undergroundy kind of indie act of the late 80s. And in fact, it was while she was playing with The Perfect Disaster that she came to the attention of the person I'm trying not to mention yet, when The Perfect Disaster supported her band on some early UK tour dates. You could argue she deserves a place purely for that kind of bizarre kind of key-changing intro to The Breeders' Cannonball alone. But she's far better than that. Yeah, Jo has a very clear, very punchy kind of bass sound. It's like assertive, but really not overbearingly so, I don't think. She has done some solo stuff as well over the last kind of 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I'd urge you to check that out too. So now to our second Jo. Yeah, this is Joe Lally of Fugazi. Yeah, Jo is the man, again, like Jo Wiggs, behind one of the most instantly recognizable bass intros in all of kind of alternative post-hardcore music. I'm talking there about the intro to Fugazi's Waiting Room. Yeah, Jo was half of Fugazi's incredible rhythm section alongside drummer Brendan Canty. Yeah, very fluid, very supple player. But, he possesses a dubby kind of phrasing that he can call on when needed. Yeah, very capable player, and he can kind of switch between that kind of lead type sound where he's kind of taking the melody, and also just much more of a kind of a pocket, kind of sit back kind of bass player. Yeah, Jo's put out a couple of great solo records as well. We've got here, Nothing Is Underrated, and There to Hear. I recommend both of these. Yeah, and as well as those solo records, he's now back in a band with Ian MacKaye again. That band is called Kiriki. So yeah, check them out too. So fifth on the list, I'm going to build this guy up a bit. Yeah, he is the singing bassist of one of Canada's greatest ever rock trios. Yes, it's Geddy. No, it's not. This is Rob Wright of No Means No. Yeah, Rob and his brother John started No Means No as just a duo, a bass and drum duo, way back in, get this, 1979. Now I feel old. Yet usually supplemented that duo with a guitarist. Most notably, I would think, would be Andy Kerr for their kind of the really big period at the turn of the 80s, 90s. But yeah, they recorded all the way from about 1981, 82 up to 2016 when they retired. Yeah, Rob's bass has got some of that kind of Jean-Jacques Burnel growl and attack, but his playing is phenomenal, you know, touching on jazz and heavy rock, as well as kind of very obviously being kind of punk hardcore based. Yeah, that bass is the main melodic instrument. Yeah, No Means No, just such a great band, and Rob Wright's a fantastic musician. Yeah, if you want suggestions, just their run of albums, like I say, at the turn of the 80s, 90s. Yeah, here's their Wrong LP. Although their 0 + 2 = 1 album is equally good. Next up, we got Mike Mills of REM. Yeah, I think there's not too much you can really say about Mike. I think when REM started, some of the band were kind of quite punkish, quite amateurish. I mean, Peter Buck is, you know, always very kind of scathing about his guitar prowess at the time of the early kind of days of REM at their inception. But Mike Mills, he was the one with the musical training. He was the one with the chops. And yeah, some of the melodic stuff you hear him playing behind kind of Peter Buck's jangly guitar, particularly on the IRS albums, is, well, it's just foundational, really. Yeah, I mean, take Laughing off Murmur. You can't help but be impressed by Mike's contributions to songs like that. Yeah, a really great, you know, and showy precision bass kind of tone. I think his influence on REM's evolution when Bill Berry left the band in the kind of mid to late 90s is undeniable, whether you like, you know, that later period of REM or not. Yeah, I think Mike's responsible for, you know, the bedrock of REM's sound, and you could argue for their success too. And if you're talking about the kind of the mid-80s American underground scene, you can't mention REM without mentioning this other band in the same breath. And that would be Husker Du. So yeah, next on this list, we have Greg Norton. Yeah, Husker Du, you know, a band of two, you know, sometimes warring singer-songwriters in Bob Mould and Grant Hart. Yeah, Greg just held it down. Yeah, an example of a great kind of pocket, a great supporting player to the music. And yeah, quite uniquely, there weren't that many of them, a fingerstyle bass player playing in kind of a hardcore kind of context. You can't talk about Greg as well without bringing up that moustache. Yeah, one of rock's great moustaches, I think. And next up, 8th on the list, we have Mark Ibold of Pavement. Yeah, Pavement sound was quite heavily centered around the kind of the collision of those slightly ramshackle guitars from, you know, Malkmus and Spiral Stairs. And of course, you know, Malkmus's, you know, very unique kind of voice in his lyrics. But again, yeah, Mark was the kind of the glue, I think, in a way that wasn't really, you know, scene stealing. It didn't kind of corral that Pavement clutter too much, but it did just enough to kind of really hold everything together. Yeah, also responsible for some really nice kind of melodic bass lines, which helped him kind of knit together some of the looser song parts. I mean, a great example is his bass line in Stereo. You know, it basically just kind of keeps that track grounded whilst the guitars kind of stumble all around him. Yeah, an often overlooked part of the Pavement sound, I think, and also, yeah, quite a key contributor to kind of late period Sonic Youth, where he played with the band both live and on record too. So we started this list in Manchester with Peter Hook, and we're going to return to the northwest of England for the next 3 entries on this 20. And the 9th player on my list is Steve Hanley of The Fall. Yeah, Steve was the bassist in the band from about 1979 to 1998, making him the band's second longest serving continuous member after Marquis Smith. Yeah, bass was a big part of the full sound. It was often a lead instrument, and hence Steve was the key contributor, I think, to some of their most memorable songs. Yeah, think of that prodding, muscular 3-note, almost a mantra, of Big New Prince from the Curious Orange album. Yeah, go back a little earlier, and there's that rippling kind of high run on I Feel Voxish. That's one of my favorite full tracks. And yeah, as the 90s started with the things like the Extricate album, there's that crawling kind of TikTok feel in Chicago Now. These are all kind of Steve Hanley. Just as a side note, good luck to Steve and a bunch of his other ex kind of Fall bandmates who I understand are putting together a band called the House of All. Yeah, keep your eyes peeled. You may see some stuff from them coming out over the next year or so. Yeah, 10th on the list, halfway, and we have Barry Adamson of Magazine, also the Bad Seeds, and some solo work. Yeah, Magazine were one of the, original post-punk bands formed by Howard Devoto after he left the Buzzcocks. So I think songs like, Shot by Both Sides, The Light Pours Out of Me, or Permafrost. Yeah, like Peter Hook, Barry was kind of quite a big user of chorus modulation on his bass sound. And again, beyond Magazine, if you think of his kind of tenure with the early Bad Seeds, that first kind of run of 3 or 4 albums, that run coincided with some of Nick Cave's most arresting songs. Think of that creepy, staggering bass line at the start of Tupelo. Yeah, again, not a really, super showy player, but, very, very tasteful. And the third and final of this little run of Manchester-based bass players is, of course, Andy Rourke of the Smiths. Yeah, Morrissey and Marr may, quite justifiably, I think, probably grab the headlines for the music of the Smiths. But that, Rourke, Joyce rhythm section was pretty phenomenal. And Andy had some really, really genius kind of, bass-centric moments that really stand out in the Smiths' back catalogue. Think of that slinky funkiness that he shows off in Barbarism Begins at Home. The relentless kind of gallop of the title track of The Queen is Dead. And his bass line on the wonderful Rubber Ring, one of the most kind of underrated Smith songs, I think. Yeah, Andy's a fantastic player, and I think one of the most overlooked bass players of that generation. Yeah, a few quick ones here now. So 12th on the list, I have Vern Rumsey of Unwound. Yeah, Unwound were a great US kind of post-hardcore noise trio from the Pacific Northwest. Very dissonant, complex, angular sound. And Rumsey formed a real core part of that. Yeah, if you want to get an idea of Vern's style, if you head for the Repetition album and listen to the opening of Corpse Pose, that kind of really encapsulates what he was about, I think, in that one song. Yeah, unfortunately, Vern's no longer with us. He died only 2 years ago in 2020, aged 47. Next up at number 13, I've got Jenny Lee Lindberg of Warpaint. Yeah, great kind of post-punk influenced bass work, I think, from Jenny, with some, sneaky, nice little dubby underpinnings. She's expressed kind of quite a bit of admiration for Yah Wobble and his work with Pill. And yeah, I can hear that. Yeah, here's Jenny's solo album from 2015. It's called Right On. And that one's recommended. So earlier in this list, we had a pair of Joes. Now we've got a pair of Kims. And at number 14, we have, of course, Kim Deal, the Pixies, the Breeders, and the Amps. Yeah, initially, at least, Kim wasn't really a bass player. Yeah, she had to borrow a bass to try out for the Pixies. But I think what she brought with that kind of, slightly naive bass playing style was this deadly, deadly simplicity, this huge amount of underplaying, which is utterly key to the Pixies sound of those early couple of albums. Yeah, no fills, no detours, very restrained, very clear, dead on kind of quarter note picking style. Less is more. This is it. This is that kind of minimalism writ large in Kim Deal's bass sound. So yeah, kudos to Kim for, just kind of sticking to her guns with that. And in a way, I think, inadvertently giving birth to, a whole style of bass playing, which kind of, took off during the 90s. I mean, the Smells Like Teen Spirit bass line. I think it's fair to say that owes quite a debt to the playing of Kim Deal. And our second Kim at number 15. And I think we all know who this is going to be. That's right. It's Kim Coletta of Jawbox. Yeah, sorry about that, but I did say there would be some kind of unsung players in this list, and Kim's definitely in that category. Yeah, a very cool post-hardcore bass player. She's expressed admiration in the past for, the playing of Rose Marshak of the Poster Children, who I've talked about before, as a kind of a formative bass influence. Yeah, very heavily anchored, kind of knotty, very driving sound for Jawbox's kind of two guitarists to, pivot around. And a really cool tone, yeah. A great kind of grindy, growly tone with, a splash of this, kind of glassy kind of presence on the top. Yeah, go just visit, the entire Jawbox's back catalogue. All of it. Because it's all great and you hear Kim all over it. And at number 16, I've got Fred Erskine of Hoover, The Crown Hate Ruin, The Boom, June of 44, probably a few others. Yeah, great kind of smooth dub influenced bass player with a really distinctive tone. Yeah, I talked about him at some length in my video about Hoover up above in the 90s Overlooked Underheard series. So I won't spend too much more time talking about Fred. Yeah, go check out that video if you want to hear more. But yeah, he's a really cool player and nothing more to say really. And at number 17, we have Douglas Colvin. Yeah, to you and me, that's Dee Dee Ramone of the Ramones. Yeah, that hardcore, that punk rock downstroke kind of picked bass sound. Yeah, I think Dee Dee's kind of the OG there. And honestly, an example of, the right bassist in the right context. He's a great bassist for the Ramones. Yeah, he's not, Jaco Pastorius, but he's exactly what they needed for that music. And while Dee Dee may not be the most technical bass player, the one thing that's often overlooked is his songwriting. I mean, seriously, check out which songs Dee Dee contributed to the Ramones, back catalogue. 53rd and 3rd, Commando, Rockaway Beach, Chinese Rocks. Yeah, and it was those Chinese Rocks that eventually, did for Dee Dee. The heroin. Yeah, he died of an overdose in 2002, age 50. So yeah, gone 20 years now, but, most definitely not forgotten. And staying in New York, staying in CBGB's, at number 18, we've got Tina Weymouth of Talking Heads and the Tom Tom Club. Yeah, Tina's just this perfect marriage almost of, a very cool, very minimal kind of post-punk new wave sound, but mixed up with kind of a very light, poppy, peppy funk. Yeah, when she first joined Talking Heads, at the request of her then boyfriend, Chris Frantz, ultimately he'd be her husband, she didn't know how to play bass at all. She had to learn from scratch. And I think, like Kim Deal earlier, that kind of unschooled approach to learning the bass guitar is what gives her this very cool distinctiveness. And as Talking Heads developed, the band got fuller. They started enlisting lots of extra musicians. Think of the kind of the scope of the band, circa the Remain in Light album. Tina found herself getting slightly crowded out sonically, so she started to develop, her bass sound even further. It kind of got a bit thuddier, a bit deeper, a bit more reggae influenced, so that she could kind of carve out her own little space in that lower register. So yeah, simplicity, minimalism, funk, soul, reggae. Tina mixed up quite a lot of stuff whilst staying, economical and, right in the pocket. Yeah, I think she's quite an influential bass player. That funkier, dancier feel she brought, think of all the Tom Tom Club stuff. It did help influence, I think, a generation of some of the dancier, kind of more fun post-punk acts. At number 19, we've got David William Sims of the Jesus Lizard and Scratch Acid. Yeah, David's got this unmistakable blend of deep, kind of gritty, low, growling tone with this kind of unrivaled clarity. Yeah, as with a lot of bassists in that kind of post-hardcore, post-punk scene in the US, you do hear a little of that, Jean-Jacques Bonnel clank. But I think Sims is a lot kind of tighter, more controlled. Yeah, very menacing, versus, Jean-Jacques' kind of very in-your-face kind of push. Yeah, a superb kind of technical post-hardcore bass player. And I guess, playing off someone like Dwayne Dennison, you hear a little of that kind of, that little, extra kind of jazzy pizzazz in his sound sometimes. Yeah, you want some listening suggestions? Think tracks like Monkey Trick, Boilermaker, or Nub, all by the Jesus Lizard. And at 20, kind of closing the loop, if you like, with one of the guitarists from the 20 alt guitar heroes list, I've got Mike Watt of the Minutemen, Firehose, and too many others to mention. Yeah, if you recall, in that list, yeah, D Boon was in there. And sure enough, yeah, we can't have D Boon without kind of calling out Mike Watt here. Yeah, Mike is just a US underground legend, really, and, you know, a pretty peerless bass player. You know, when Iggy Pop was looking to put together, you know, a touring Stooges band over the last kind of, you know, decade or so, he called on Mike Watt, such is his reputation. But Mike Watt, yeah, another kind of fingerstyle convert. You know, he switched to playing fingerstyle. Just got this very thuddy, restless, grumbly, aggressive, almost a lead style. You know, he runs up and down the fretboard a lot, but always kind of manages to kind of bring things back, anchor it down. And it's not all the Minutemen either. Some of his Firehose stuff is great. And some of his more recent solo stuff too, really good. I'd recommend the Hyphenated Man album from a few years back. That's a really good one. Yeah, a great guy, just a huge figure and a bass legend. And there you go. That's my list of 20. I think I said last time around that I could probably make another list of 20 on a different day and it would be completely different. Well, as part of the exercise of drawing up this list, I did have a very big master list. So alongside me, you should see a list of names scrolling, which formed kind of another 20, another whole 20. So if you're smarting because your favorite bass player hasn't made it into this list, check that out there. You might see their name pop up. And there we go. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. And there's some stuff in there to discuss, think about, have fun with. Yeah, as usual, thanks for watching, and comments, likes, subscriptions. Yeah, all very, very welcome. Yeah, I hope you come back and join me again soon. Bye for now.